Ma'am, greetings, sister. Uh,
Oh,
Okay, we are live.
all right. Hotel, peace, greetings, family. Of course, my name is Baba Aundar, co-founder of Melaneyes Media, and we're an independent film company based out of San Antonio, Texas. Of course, our calling, our mission is to, of course, share our experience, the Black experience, through documentary films and other educational presentations. Of course, I want to welcome you to our Tuesday morning Black Conversations, just giving us an opportunity to talk about various subjects in relationship to us as a people. And of course, we always honored to have you here with us. And for those who may see this later on, give you a chance and give us an opportunity just to have conversations and talk about things that are important to us. Of course, I'm going to pass it over to my brother, who's going to guide us through our conversation for this evening. And as we talk about, I think, self-determination. But go ahead, my brother.
Indeed. Peace, Baba Aundar. Peace and greetings, family. Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm the co-founder of Melaneyes Media, Logic. I just want to say thank you for joining us. These conversations on Tuesday mornings are housed on our YouTube channel. We would encourage you to subscribe to our channel and even go back and watch some of the previous episodes of things that we've had an opportunity to discuss. Also want to encourage you to join us for our Sunday night Black History presentations that take place at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can find more information about that at melanizemedia.com. And so today's topic of conversation is self-determination. We know that Kwanzaa is upon us, and we know that the second principle of Kwanzaa is Kujichagulia, which is self-determination. So we really just want to define what that means for us, just have a conversation about how we can apply it in our daily lives and what does that mean for us as a people. So just starting it off, Baba Aundar, what comes to mind when you think about self-determination?
I think of, the definition itself as written by Dr. Karinga when he's defining self-determination. Of course, think for ourselves, create for ourselves, speak for ourselves, create for ourselves, and do for ourselves instead of being, thinking, having the thoughts and having someone else do for us. And I think the idea many times as we stand in the circle of Kwanzaa is just never giving up and doing for ourselves. Of course, I think this is probably one of the most challenging principles because we have, in the past 500 years or so, we have gone through an experience where that sense of self-determination and creation and doing for self and speaking for self have been very challenging because of the enslavement of us as a people and going through this experience where we have been forced into a position where we've been made in a way dependent upon someone else and forced to accept someone else, speaking for us and doing for us. And I think this is a real struggle for us even to this very day, because the struggle is that what is self-determination then for us? What does it look like? We're finding ourselves speaking definitely more so, and of course striving to try to create more so for ourselves, but it's a very challenging situation. And I'll say this, the challenge sometimes is when you look at the basic necessities of life, we all gotta have food, clothing, and shelter. But we're in a relationship now that very little of that is created by us as a people. I'm talking about as Black people here in America. So it becomes very challenging in relationship because if you're dependent on someone else to do those things, what we consider the basic things, then it becomes challenging to then speak for ourselves in relationship to if someone else controls those things. So basically saying, I think the idea for me is that as a people, we have to start really giving thought to thinking for ourselves and thinking beyond sometimes I think what is considered to be the American dream, thinking about what would a world look like if it was a world that really reflected the principles, the values, the ideas of us as a people. And of course, in thinking that, then being able to just express that in our language or in our words, and then of course finally being able to create that. And I think that's one of the things that is important about this whole principle of self-determination. We should have a conversation about what does it mean for us, or what does the world look like if it's created by us, for us.
I think those are really good points. And as you were talking, I was writing down some notes. When I think about self-determination, first off, just thinking about first with the word self, in all honesty, I think that's really important and key to it, because self depends on, or is really defined by the whole totality of a being, my personhood. But the larger, broader scope of self really is the universal self, us, meaning us, really, because we have to always understand our individual position, but understand that we as a whole are also our own selves. And I think if we start to tap into that a little bit more, understanding that the balance that needs to exist between the two, because as a part of the greater whole, I benefit more, even though I still can benefit individually. And so I think having that balance is probably the first thing that's probably most important when really talking about self-determination, because we really have to be in tune with self and understand that that doesn't necessarily, is not limited to you as an individual. Because what we do as a whole or as a group sometimes can affect individuals and vice versa. Then to be determined, we have to have the basis of determination is an idea and an ideal. And so it really starts in the mind, in my opinion, because if you have self-determination, we talk about defining oneself, doing for oneself, but before you can really do for self, you have to define self. And you have to have a true vision and identity of who you are as an individual. And then that group also has to have a very clear definition and identity. That's why I think it may be more of a challenge because of those things. And I think that we sometimes struggle with our own personal self-identity. And then I think as a collective, just being Black or having brown or dark skin is not enough anymore right now to define us as a collective. Some people don't want to be defined clearly just by the color of their skin. And I don't think any of us want to be defined strictly by that. However, I do think that our ancestry, our culture, the things that we've experienced should help to define us, especially here in America specifically. But I was going to read something that I found here online. And it said that self-determination refers to a person's ability to make choices and manage their own life. Now, I thought that's pretty good. And then I want to hear what you thought about that when you hear that sentence, and then I'll give my take.
No, and I think that really is very simple, but it's very direct, and I think that's the idea of being self-determined. It's like as a child, of course, we come into this world newborn, and we're very dependent. I mean, we have to have someone who feeds us, clothes us, cleans us, provide for us, because we're not able to do those things for ourselves in that state of existence, but eventually we grow, and physically, we grow mentally, and we grow in our capabilities of starting to do some basic things. So we start to walk, and we walk for ourselves instead of having someone carry us, and we start to feed ourselves and dress ourselves. And eventually, as we grow older, we should reach a point of maturity where now we have our identity of self, knowing that I can do these things for myself. I can go out here and get some food for myself. So I can go out here and get clothes for myself, a house. And then it gives us a position where now we can think for ourselves and do for ourselves. And of course, in that relationship, that beginning relationship, we reach a point where sometimes where we have thoughts different from those who, was housing us, clothing us, and taking care of us in the very beginning. So now it becomes necessary because, of course, sometimes parents will just let look here, this is the rules here, but if you have some different thoughts, it's time for you to go ahead and create the place and space you want to live in. But it comes down to, as you know, what you was reading, the fact is it comes down to now we can think for ourselves, we can do for ourselves, we can go out and create the space for ourselves. So I think that whole process is a process of coming into self-identity, self-awareness, and being now determined to express our views and our existence in the world.
You know, one thing I really, and this is something that, and maybe this is maybe just my own personal thing that I'm going through right now. I've really been questioning a lot of the sayings and the phrases that we tend to say. I know last time we talked about unity, the common theme is, well, Black people don't really stick together. And I'm really starting to challenge these notions. Like, I don't believe that. And I don't even think that there's enough evidence to substantiate that being said. The other thing too, really, nobody's ever taken care of us. When I really started to think about it, and I thought about enslavement, we did everything. All the labor was ours. And in fact, it was said that the people that were the enslavers couldn't survive without us. It wasn't the other way around. In fact, out of the enslavement period, we built townships and communities that were up and running and operating immediately because we had all the skills. We had all the farming skills. We had all the clothing making skills. We had all of the building skills because we were doing all the work. So I really started thinking about it. Wait a minute. We didn't have all the skills. We have all the abilities we always have. That's why I think is really the mentality, because we had to think about, all right, well, if we were doing for ourselves, if we had our own self-sustaining communities, what happened? Mm-hmm. What happened was fear was implanted and these things were dismantled. So it was a mental, it was the fear put in us that, hey, if you do these things, there's a steep consequence of death and destruction. If you commune and come together on your own, you're going to be constantly under the threat of it being taken away. That's why you need to come over here with us. Because if you gather too much, if you get too successful on your own, we're going to find a way to break it down, and we're going to find a way to make you pay for that. And I think that seed of dissatisfaction, that seed of fear had been planted in us. And I think that that's probably more of a reason why, if it, and once again, I'm not even going to say it's difficult, but if it is a difficulty in it, I think that it goes right back to the mentality of it and the thwarting of us coming together that planted seeds consciously and unconsciously in our elders, our ancestors, that then it would, going even back to the enslavement period, just again, when parents would sometimes want to punish their children so that the master, quote unquote, wouldn't punish them because it was going to be way harsher from them. So sometimes I think we discourage certain activities because we fear that greater retribution could come from the larger society if we come together, if we do certain things, if we step out of line, if we go against the grain. And I think that's probably the larger barrier. And I think that a lot of these topics that we talk to really come back to a mentality. And it also says that, and in order to really get past that, I think that we have to grow in confidence, and we have to dream and think bigger. And I think that's probably the larger frontier for us, is we may be thinking about, hey, how can we get our own, township or city and things of that nature. We may be needing to think about how can we get our own country, our own plot of land with millions of people. We may really need to start thinking bigger. We might really need to be looking at that concept of Wakanda on a more real scale, for real.
Yeah. No. And I think that's important, brother. You said a lot there. Just the mentality, though. And I think that's, in a way, what it comes down to is that we have to, I think, evolve and grow in our mentality of thinking for self. But first of all, before I say even that, though, I think you made an excellent point, because in essence, brother, it's not that we were doing for a lot for us. We was doing a lot. But it was to the benefit of someone else for the most part. So in our act of self-determination or doing for self, we were, and I think that's a part of the equation, is that we have been doing things, but it has been benefiting, contributing to someone else's appearance of success or advancement. And I think that's where sometimes the disconnect, because when you practice or engage in an act of self-determination, it should reflect some growth. It should reflect benefits, I mean, directly for you and your family and your community and your people. And then you'll know, look, I'm doing this for us. I'm doing this out of self because I'm creating a space and a world and making the things that we need as a people. But it also speaks to the, when you talked about the mentality of, when we did the presentation, the lynching of Black America, one of the things that we noticed was that anytime there was a rise in our consciousness in doing for self, there was an attack on us as a people to somehow and going back to that parents relationship, sometimes people don't want you to leave the house. They make you feel like you can't leave here because if you leave here, something horrible is going to happen to you. And they're the horrible things that are making things happen, horrible people. But I'm saying is that we get into this relationship now that it's not definitely not beneficial to us. But also it made me think about, this idea of integration. As you was talking, it made me reflect on the fact that, there used to be a little saying, is integration leading us back to the plantation, or is it going to lead us to a nation? The fact of having something for ourselves as a people. And I think that became a real question for us as a people, because at one time, even before this idea of integration, we saw ourselves creating more businesses for ourselves, because we, of course, can go into other people's businesses. But that was okay. We saw a creation of an economic foundation for us as a people being developed. And basically saying that on that path, I think we would have come into a more equal, if you want to say, relationship with other people, because nations trade with other nations. Nations, have diplomats and they exchange resources and ideas with other nations. But if someone feel like if we're in a relationship where we're not expressing ourselves as a nation or a people because we don't have that mentality, then it creates, it maintains a position of dependency. And the last thing I say on that, brother, is that when you talked about just the mentality of the view of, I thought about going back in time, because many times we start thinking of self-determination out of slavery. And I think we need to go back beyond our enslavement to really think about the practice of self-determination before our enslavement. Because as we highlighted in some of our presentations, of course, we had governments, we had systems, economic systems, we had library, we had family, we had community, we had all those things, and we were doing for ourselves. And maybe that's the point where we need to depart from when we start talking about self-determination.
I see here in the chat, there's a comment. When I was younger, I would watch Civil War and slavery movies. When the slaves were freed, the slave owners' houses began to crumble and look awful. It was like they couldn't survive and I think it's supposed to say without the Black help. I think that's really key. And once again, in my cultural upbringing, one thing that I was taught is to start flipping things, 180, because that's almost closer aligned to the truth than what we are seeing before us. So as opposed to thinking of us being the minority, we should be thinking that we are the majority, because the global reference, we are the global majority. When we start thinking about the paternal relationship, we are actually parental, because we are the mothers and fathers of civilization. Yeah. They are more dependent on us than we are on them. And I think history will show that. And I think the other thing that we truly need to understand, and really, this really just made me think about Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. there's almost a parasite type relationship here in America. It's like they won't let us go. It's not that we can't. It would affect them more. And I want us to understand that. It would affect them more than what it would affect us. We're not going to lose anything as far as skill set, ability. People say, well, we don't own no factories. I guarantee we'll have one up in a minute if it was necessary. There's nothing in the realm of possibility that Black people, the original people of the planet Earth, could not create. It straight out of enslavement. If you look at the list of inventions, we have the most innovative minds and determined ability of any people on the planet Earth, period. And if we don't believe that, that's always going to be a problem for us. But the minute we step away, the minute we would detach ourselves, we would definitely it would be a valley, but the peak would be so quick it would take no time. And I think if we truly understood that, we wouldn't have any fears, because once again, this comes back to a mentality. And I think the only thing in this modern society right now that keeps a lot of us in chain is money. We would say and do a lot more and be a lot more of our natural selves if our job and our income and our household and our food wasn't dependent on those salaries that are often given to us. And even sometimes I'm starting to realize even some of our businesses operate in a way that's still sometimes dependent on loans and things like that from the quote unquote larger society. And sometimes we still fear even in freedom of a salary, but sometimes our incomes, even through our businesses, sometimes are connected heavily to the white world. So basically what I'm saying is that I think that it's not a matter of if it's possible. I don't even think that really should be a question for us. I think it really should just be about why is it not happening, and then how can we do more to make it happen? Because ultimately, once again, we talk about unity, we talk about freedom. That's not going to involve everybody. Everybody's not going to heal. Everybody's not going to want to go for that. Everybody's not in a position mentally or physically for that. However, those of us that are willing to embark on that type of thing, to have more self-determination, to truly be self-sufficient, I think we should just strive to connect with people on that same page and do as much as we possibly can with the numbers that we have. And sometimes you can provide a great enough example where you influence other people to say, well, hey, I like what's happening over there. Maybe I can do it too.
I think that's an excellent point, brother. And I just think one of the things that you just said that really jumped out to me was that there's no question we have the ability. We have the skills, we have the knowledge. Of course, as you mentioned in that part there, is saying that we are the foundation of this, humanity, civilization. So it's no question that we can do it. And in some degrees, we are doing it. And I think it's just an idea that has to continue to grow in us as a people, as a collective, understanding that, yeah, there may be a valley. It's like the maroon within. I think Dr. Asa here has a book, but in really talking about the ideas that as a maroon, you go out into the woods because you're escaping, you have to forge your freedom. It's going to be challenging because now you're going to take the resources out there and create this world that you want to live in, food, clothing, shelter, and all the other things that you need. But the possibility of once you start building that and other people start seeing our ability as nation builders, then we join forces and we'll see something, I think, that's truly beautiful and amazing, because the real thing that would be most beautiful about it is that we would have built it for ourselves instead of waiting for someone else to build it for us. And with our creativity, I think it can only be amazing in its growth and development over time. And I think, but it's that mentality And going back to that, the idea of being determined to think freely, to think and have confidence in ourselves as individuals and as a collective, and knowing that we can do this because history tells us we have done it before, and therefore we can do it again.
Absolutely. I definitely concur with that. And I think what you just said about creativity is key. I mean, we are creative. We will, and the other thing too, I mean, we don't, we often talk about, our great history, and we speak about the civilizations, but I don't think we need to gloss over, we built this one too. Because, I was sitting here talking to my children one day just about Benjamin Banneker, but when you really think about the fact that, I mean, from memory, you know what I mean? You can map out a whole city, the capital. I mean, that's amazing, amongst the other things that he did. But just really thinking about some of these things, I mean, we literally built the nation. So yeah. But I did want to, because I see it's a comment here. By no means am I against integration, but I noticed that the more that it happens, the more that we take money out of our community. Take, for instance, beauty salons. Black women flick to Asian nail salons while passing by Black salons or buying hair. Did you all talk about this when you did the Black consumerism, the Black consumers presentation? Not about this example specifically, but I would encourage you to actually study this, because this is not by happenstance. It's not just that there happen to be Asian salons, nail shops, and wig places for Black people. They actually are the manufacturers of a lot of these goods and have set up almost a monopoly to block Black distributors and Black stores out of that circle, believe it or not. And so they literally have a domination on the trading and the commerce of these products and goods, especially wigs and things of that nature. So that's the reason why there are Black hair supply and or supply stores, hair supply and nail salons that are owned by Koreans and the Vietnamese. That's literally a whole history of them doing that. And they block and lock Black business owners out of that network. And so just want you to understand that, because it's not that sometimes people just, well, we can't open up a beauty supply and things of that nature. No, that is a definite conspiracy or a plan to lock us out of that. Well, this has been a fruitful conversation.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about, I think, our Tuesday morning conversation, it's so vast, really. It could be a conversation that we can and we should continue to have, until we really come into a full understanding of what we're going to do now. But the idea is that we just only hope to open up a pathway to some of these ideas that we should, as a people, be talking about. Because, growing up, brother, many times in our conversational circles, needless to say, we talked about sports and other, things that I ask myself now, if we had engaged in conversations like this about unity and self-determination, how far advanced we would be, because I think we would have come up with a lot of creative ideas just to, forge this idea of self-determination forward for us as a people. But needless to say, it begins with a conversation, but the conversation requires we have the mentality. We are thinking about these things, and that's what I'm hoping we continue to grow, brother, is that we just open up a pathway as others are having these kind of conversations, talking about these things, because ultimately, maybe someone will find within our conversation and discussion some perspectives or some ideas that we can build on. And I just like the idea today, for example, brother, just the idea of building the mentality to learn from our past, as we often say, our history of our self-determination. And I like the fact that you made the point that our self-determination might not be so far in the past. Our self-determination could be very much seen right here in the present. And I'm talking about our experience as Black people in America. We have been self-determined to create And of course, needless to say, there are always forces that are trying to prevent you from expressing your fullness as a human being. And I think, of course, we have to accept that, you know. But the idea, we keep moving forward, we keep creating, and we keep striving to be a self-determined people.
Indeed. And I think that I feel like these conversations, I know for me, it helped me look at things differently every time we speak. And so hopefully those of you that are listening, hopefully you gain something from it. We definitely appreciate your time. Once again, we would encourage you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Continue to join us at melanizemedia.com, where once again, you can take participation in our Sunday evening conversations and presentations. A lot of information that we usually share. So just want to encourage you all to continue to join us for those things. And with that being said, brother, I feel like this is a good conversation, and I'm excited to see what we talk about next week.
Yes, sir. Well, let's continue to build on it, my brother.
Indeed.
I appreciate you. Appreciate the family joining us. Thank
Absolutely.
you, sister.
All right, peace, brother.
All right, peace.